Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes.
Hey guys, Amber here with the Meeple family, and today I am going to be doing a how to play on the game Hidden Leaders. So Hidden Leaders is a 2 to 6 player game, and the recommended age is about 10 and up, and the game takes roughly 30 minutes to play. Now if you haven't already, I'd love to invite you to subscribe to our channel so you're notified when new videos come out, as well as give this video a thumbs up. That helps our channel grow and we really appreciate it. Well, let's head down to the table and see how Hidden Leaders plays, and hopefully this will give you a good idea of how this game works and if it's a good fit for your gaming table. As always, at the end of the video, I'll give you my thoughts on Hidden Leaders. Well, thank you so much for joining me at the table. I think before we get started, I want to give you a little idea of the overview and concept of this game. So the premise of this game is that following the death of the emperor, there's a conflict between the hill tribes and the imperial army. And these are actually dictated by the mountain and shield tokens you see here. So basically, thematically in this game, we're going to be having a tug of war between the hill tribes and the imperial army trying to be victorious after the emperor's death. Now, in addition to the conflict between the hill tribe and imperial army, who are both trying to gain control since the emperor's death, we also have the water folk. And the water folk are trying to maintain balance between these rivals. And the last faction we will see in this game is the undead, and their aim is to cause an outright war. Now, to get started, each player is going to be dealt a hidden leader. Now, let's take a look at these hidden leader cards. All leaders are aligned with 2 of the 4 fractions we just talked about, so we can see that this leader here is aligned with the hill tribe or imperial army, whereas this leader here is aligned with the water folk or hill tribe, and this leader here is aligned with the imperial army and the undead. Now, depending on what hidden leader you're dealt during the start of the game will dictate who you're aligned with and who you would like to see win at the game's end. So if we started the game with this hidden leader, we're looking to have the imperial army or undead win the game. Now, the other main component we have here are 77 hero cards, which, might I add, the artwork on these is amazing. Now, we're going to be collecting these hero cards, and as we play these hero cards, it's going to help us manipulate the imperial army marker and the hill tribe marker. And depending on what faction we're aligned with, we're going to want these markers to be in a particular pattern for our faction to win. So let's quickly take a look at how that works. So let's use this hidden leader as an example. We can see that they are aligned with either the imperial army faction or the undead. So let's take a look at their objective and win conditions. So we can see here on the very top one, it shows us the win condition for the undead faction to win. And basically for the undead to win, we just need to have both of these markers placed on the dark area of the board. As long as they're both there at the end game, then we know that the undead has won. Now, this hidden leader is also aligned with the imperial army, and we can see that one here, the third one down. Now, in order for that imperial army to win, at the end of the game, the imperial army token just has to be 2 ahead of the hill tribes. Now, maybe you're asking yourself, how does the game end? Well, we can see here that a 2-player game is going to conclude when one player has 8 face-up heroes in front of them. At that point, we'll check the win conditions to see what faction has won the game. Now, that was a pretty quick overview of how this game works, so I think what I'd like to do is set up a 2-player game for you and play a couple hands so you can get a feel for the mechanics of this game. Now, since we're setting up a 2-player game, we can go ahead and put this card out just to remind us that the game ends as soon as one player has 8 face-up heroes in front of them. And we can go ahead and discard these other player count reminders back to the box. To get started, we're going to go ahead and shuffle the 6 leader cards and deal 1 to each player face down. Now, keep in mind that these need to stay hidden throughout the game. Of course, you can look at your own hidden leaders so you know what faction you want to win, but you're going to want to keep it hidden from other players. And we can go ahead and put the rest of the hidden leaders back in the box. You're also going to want to find the buried emperor. He's going to have the same back as our other hero cards. So once you find him, he is actually going to go next to this icon here on the board that symbolizes a graveyard. You're then going to want to go ahead and shuffle all of the hero cards and place them next to this anchor symbol, which in the game is referred to as the harbor. We're then going to need to fill in our tavern, which is symbolized by these mugs of beer down at the bottom of the board. We're going to put 1 hero under each beer icon. Once our tavern is full, go ahead and decide who's going to go first. We're then going to deal each player 5 hero cards. each player can go ahead and look at their hero cards. Why don't we go ahead and take on the role of this hidden leader here? So we can see that we're aligned with the undead as well as the hill tribes. So our winning conditions are either going to be to get both of these tokens into the undead spaces or the dark spaces on the board. The other option we have to win is just to make sure that the hill tribe is at least 2 spaces in front of the Imperial army. So a situation like this would allow the hill tribe to secure the win. Now, I don't think I mentioned earlier on the board, but these spaces are numbered from 1 to 12. And there's also a minus sign on the leftmost side of the board and a positive or plus sign on the right side of the board. That way you always know what direction to move the tokens, and you always know who's in the lead, either based on who's closest to the plus sign or on the higher numerical space. So now that we have an idea of what faction we want to win, let's go ahead and take a look at our starting hand. Now, when starting the game with our hand of 5 cards, we're first going to place one of them face down. Now, these face down heroes are going to come into play at the end of the game as a tiebreaker, and a situation may arise where I may be wanting the undead faction to win, but my opponent may also be okay with the undead faction winning. So there are going to be tiebreakers in the game, and one of the way that these tiebreakers take place is the player with the most heroes of the winning faction party wins. And you're not only going to count face up heroes, but also face down heroes. So you need to be strategic about what heroes you place face down, because they could make the difference between you winning or losing that tiebreaker. Now, it is important to note also that these face down heroes don't actually count towards the 8 face up heroes needed to trigger the game end. So now we have 4 cards in our hand. So the next thing we need to do is place one of them in the wilderness, which is depicted on this top portion of the game board by a campfire. Now, basically, the wilderness is just a discard pile. So we're just going to be discarding one of these heroes that's probably going to benefit us the least into the wilderness. So I'm going to go ahead and discard this one, and now I actually have my starting hand of 3 cards. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly do the same for the opponent player here. So now that all players have their starting hand set, we're ready to start the game. We just need to make sure that our tokens are on the starting position, which is actually space number 4, and there's also a starting icon on the top portion of that space. So let's go over what you can do on your turn. During your turn, you're going to perform the following 4 steps, and they have to be done in order. Now, there is a really handy player aid that you can have out at the table as well, just to keep you on track. So let's go ahead and look at number 1. Now, number 1 gives us an option. We can either play one of our cards and perform its ability, or if we're really unhappy with our player hand, we can actually discard up to 3 cards, and we would discard those into the wilderness. So let's go ahead and say that I want to play this card here. This card is going to allow me to move either the red or green token back 1, and then I'm going to bury 1 face down card. Now, knowing that my alliance is with the hill tribe, my goal is to keep this green marker in front of the red one. So it would benefit me greatly to take this action by moving the red marker back 1 space. Now I can do the bottom portion of the card, which is bury any one face down hero. Now, when it talks about burying a hero, we're going to put them in the graveyard. And this card that I played is actually going to start my face up hero collection. So I'm just going to set that in my display area. Now, I don't really want to bury my face down hero because this could help me at the game end tiebreaker. So I'm actually going to bury my opponent's hidden hero. And when we place things into the graveyard, we actually turn them face up. Now, just a quick note about marker movement. Markers cannot move off of or below the numbers on the board. So if the marker is here and I'm able to move the red marker playing a hero card further, obviously I can't do that because I can't go lower than 1 and I can't go past 12. So the markers are limited in movement based on the game board numbers depicted here. So now that we have chosen our number 1 step, another option we have for this first step of our turn is to discard our cards, but we chose to play a hero card into our display area instead. So now we move on to step 2. We draw cards from, remember the anchor sign is the harbor, and or in combination, we can get cards from the tavern until we have 4 cards in hand. So currently I have 2 cards in hand. So I may look at the tavern and decide that this card could greatly benefit me me, and I may also draw one from the harbor. So now we're on to step 3, and we actually need to discard down to 3 cards in hand. So remember, anytime we discard, we are going to be putting a card into the wilderness. So I'm going to quickly look over my cards here and decide which one is probably going to benefit my goal the least and discard that into the wilderness. And it is at this point that we will refill the tavern, which is step 4 on our turn overview. So using cards from the harbor, we will refill the tavern and play will continue to our opponent. So now that both players have taken their first turn, play is going to continue just like this until one player has 8 face-up heroes, and currently each player just has the 1 face-up hero. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what the end of the game might look like. Now the game ends as soon as any player takes a turn and triggers that 8 heroes face-up in their display area, and we can see here that our opponent was able to do that. They've got 8 face-up heroes while we have 7. So as soon as that is done, we can go ahead and discard any cards we have in our hand. We will not need to resolve those. And once we've discarded our heroes in hand, we're going to turn our attention to the game board here to determine what faction has been victorious. Now, there is a wonderful little player aid here just to remind you of the different win conditions, but we can see here that since both markers are actually inside of those dark spaces on the game board, that the undead has won. Now, you may notice as well that the hill tribe marker is actually ahead of the imperial marker, which is another win condition, but the undead victory trumps all other win conditions, so the undead have been victorious. Now that we've determined the winning faction, we can now reveal our hidden leader cards. So here we have a situation where both myself and my opponent have actually claimed victory because we are both aligned with the undead faction. So that means we move into a tie. Now, in order to resolve this tie, we have to first look at the player with the most heroes of the winning faction. Now, we're not only going to count our face-up heroes, but we're also going to need to reveal the hidden heroes that we've played during the game. So I can see my opponent has 3 undead, while I actually have 4, meaning that I have won the game, even though they triggered the end of the game. Now, if by chance we had both tied, and let's say that I hadn't had this hidden leader and we actually both had the same amount of undead heroes in our display, we would then look at the player with the lowest total number of heroes in their party, regardless of faction. And if by chance that was still a tie, there is one final determination. We actually take our leader and we look at the numbers in the bottom left-hand corner, and the winner would be determined by which leader has the highest number. And that is a quick overview of how to play hidden leaders. Well, as always, thank you guys so much for joining me at the table while I tried to give you a quick idea of how this game Hidden Leaders plays and the mechanics of the game. After watching this, I hope it gives you a good idea of not only how to play the game, but if the game's a good fit for your gaming table. Now, the only other game I have played that has this tug-of-war mechanic is Watergate, and in Watergate, you know who you're playing and you know who you're up against, where in this game, there is a little bit of deducing who you think your opponent is aligned with. You don't know that because it's hidden in the beginning of the game, and I absolutely love that element. I also love in this game that you can actually be trying to have the same faction win because you may both be aligned, like in the example we saw with the undead. So during gameplay, you're having to keep that in mind and try to play that particular faction, but you also don't want to give away who you're aligned with because your opponent may target you ferociously for doing so. I also love the idea of the hidden heroes because during gameplay, there's actually different heroes you can play that allow you to look at your opponent's hidden heroes, and that can sometimes help you deduce who they may be aligned with and what faction they are rooting for. Now, one of the things I really love about this game is the length of it. It's only about 30 minutes to play. I think one of the longest games we had maybe was 35 minutes, and I was teaching my 8-year-old to play. So I feel like that's not really a fair assessment of the length of the game, but I do love how short the game is, but how much strategic gameplay fits within that compact time frame. Well, this was definitely a game we really enjoyed, and I would love to hear from you guys what your thoughts are of this game. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you later.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes.